It's a bunch of silliness, but to your point, Abby, your comment a moment ago that got me when you said he's coming after the men too. I think JD Vance has mommy issues.
On CNN last night, one of the most despicable, disgusting, absolutely mean-spirited lies about JD Vance that you'll ever see. This is Tavis Smiley on CNN, a left-wing commentator, liberal race-baiting commentator, who just can't stand the fact that JD Vance sat and had an incredibly effective, thorough, and normal conversation with Joe Rogan, something his candidate couldn't even bring herself to do because she's incapable of it. And then take a look at Tavis Smiley's expert, CNN-approved analysis.
It's a bunch of silliness, but to your point, Abby, your comment a moment ago that got me when you said he's coming after the men too. I think JD Vance has mommy issues. And it's been fascinating for me to watch the way this has played out on the campaign trail. And because of those issues, he has subjected women across this country to all his bad ideas and all his bad policy. Maya Angelou once told me that processing pain without perpetuating pain is rough business. So if you got mommy issues and you make everybody else in the country subject to that, that's a real problem. But to your point, now he's coming after the men. I remember an episode of This American Life years ago where the staff all took testosterone tests. And when the results came in, the male host of that show, Ira, had the highest testosterone. And the executive producer of that show, a woman, had the highest level of testosterone, which suggests to me that
this conversation.
The big dogs just rule, male or female. The big dogs.
Well, Abby Phillips is really yucking it up there. She thinks it's hilarious as Tavis Smiley goes off on a Maya Angelou, This American Life, testosterone-fueled word salad that would rival anything Kamala Harris brings to the table. But let's not overlook the gross, disgusting little slime that he threw out there right at the beginning. That, again, CNN host Abby Phillips thinks is just hilarious. Tavis, what was that you said about JD Vance one more time?
A bunch of silliness, but to your point, Abby, your comment a moment ago that got me when you said he's coming after the men too. I think JD Vance has mommy issues.
You know, JD Vance is new to a lot of people on the political scene. In fact, just over the last month or two, most Americans have just gotten to know him. That's why, by the way, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and the despicable members of the propaganda media tried to define him before he could actually introduce himself, right? What did they say? He's weird. He's weird. All they did was throw, he's weird. He's weird. The only thing people knew about him before actually getting to know him and seeing him say a word on television was that he's weird. Wow, that guy's weird, right? But of course, now that you have seen him do interview after interview after interview after interview, he's the furthest thing from weird. He's normal. In fact, he's probably one of the most normal people in Washington, D.C. Why? Because he's only been in D.C. for like 2 years, not even that. He just became a senator in 2022 when he won the midterms as the new junior senator from Ohio. He's actually quite normal because he hasn't been in Washington enough. See, to Washington, D.C. people and to news people, normal is weird. But if anyone didn't really know who JD Vance was until he was introduced to the American people as the running mate for Donald Trump over the last couple of months, if you knew anything about JD Vance, anything at all, you knew the character of JD Vance from his award-winning, best-selling, groundbreaking book, Hillbilly Elegy, or for those of you who don't read books, you know the adaptation of that book into a major Hollywood film by director Ron Howard, starring Glenn Close and Amy Adams. You knew that guy, JD Vance. And if you knew Hillbilly Elegy, well, you knew one fundamental aspect of that story, and that is JD Vance's relationship with his mother and with his grandmother. And what do we know about JD Vance and his relationship with his mother? His mother had a debilitating, destructive, almost life-ending addiction problem. An addiction problem that was brought on and sort of became an iconic representation of the despair that so many Americans have had to live through for the last 2 decades in rural Appalachia, in the impoverished parts of this country that were left behind by both the Obama administration and the Bush administration. You know, those people that they can't go to the coal mine anymore because we're more interested in embracing solar and wind powered energy. Well, let them learn to code. Oh, they can't make automobiles or parts for automobiles anymore. You know, we call it the Rust Belt now because those towns that used to be built on factories and men going to work to be able to earn a living and raise their families and be good providing husbands for their wives. We shut those factories down so we can exploit cheap labor south of the border over in China. Well, that's fine. Let them learn to code, or they can move to a big city, get out of those towns anyway. Why should you even want to waste your life there? Yeah, all of those people that were left behind, that's where JD Vance came from. That's what JD Vance's mother had to deal with. And in that despair, yeah, a lot of people ended up turning to addiction, oftentimes because doctors overprescribed OxyContin and various other pharmaceuticals. We know that because it was detailed in his book and in his film. We know that she couldn't even raise her own son. And so he's been raised by his grandmother for much of his life, for his formative years. He talks about her all the time, my Meemaw. If there's anything anybody knows about JD Vance up until the last 2 months, that's what we knew. The tragic and yet heroic and uplifting story of his mother. His mother, whose life was frankly impacted in one of the most destructive and negative ways by Washington, D.C., and the politics that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden openly embrace, as did Hillary Clinton, frankly, as does Liz Cheney and all of the never Trump Republicans who are doing anything they can to keep JD Vance and Donald Trump from winning this election. And what does Tavis Smiley do? Tavis Smiley mocks it. Tavis Smiley spits on that relationship, spits on JD Vance, spits on his mother, with that despicable, gross, obnoxious excuse for a political talking point. JD Vance has mommy issues. And look at Abby Phillips. Look how bemused she is at it. You remember at the end of this clip, which I will not play again, she's laughing. She's chuckling. She thinks it's hilarious. You know, last time we checked in with Abby Phillips, she was kicking Ryan Girdusky off the air because Ryan Girdusky made a joke about Mehdi Hassan, a man whose media empire is financed by the nation of Qatar, who spends a lot of money financing some other nefarious organizations in the Middle East. Ryan Girdusky made a joke saying, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. And Abby Phillips was so outraged that she went to commercial break, came back, had kicked Ryan Girdusky off the air, apologized to Mehdi Hassan, and apologized to viewers. There's a line that we don't cross here, Abby Phillips said. But apparently Tavis Smiley isn't anywhere near that line. Tavis Smiley is dancing on the line. Tavis Smiley is doing an end zone dance, spiking the ball on that line. He knows that he can get away with saying any despicable thing about JD Vance and his mother. And Abby Phillips not only will allow it, but she'll enjoy it. Just look at her face, looking admirably at Tavis Smiley. That's where CNN is right now. You should hold them in such disdain and disgust. These are the lines they've drawn in this election. This is where they're willing to go to try to get some sort of kudos or points from the few people that are still so warped that they're watching that channel. I'm guessing they're out of batteries in the house. They can't figure out how to change them in the remote control. And so it's just stuck on CNN. Thankfully, you know better. You can move on from then. JD Vance has mommy issues. Yeah, you know what? Let's remind ourselves, if we could, of JD Vance's relationship with his mother. This was the Republican National Convention, where JD Vance, growing up in that impoverished despair of Appalachia, lifts himself up, joins the Marine Corps, uses the GI Bill to get an undergrad at Ohio State University, and then eventually a graduate degree from Yale. He ends up being successful in business and investing. He then turns that story into a best-selling novel, a best-selling memoir, then turned into a Netflix film that won umpteen awards for the stars and the creators, including Ron Howard and Glenn Close and Amy Adams. And then he becomes a senator, and now he's on the brink of being vice president of the United States. You want to talk about mommy issues? After that American journey, here's JD Vance at the Republican National Convention, acknowledging his mother, who is now clean and sober and has gone through that entire tragic life to see her son stand right there on that stage.
And I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here, 10 years clean and sober. I love you, Mom.
That's who Tavis Smiley is spitting on. That's who Tavis Smiley is making fun of. That's who Tavis Smiley is degrading, criticizing, and dragging through his own dementia. That's who CNN allowed to get disparaged on national television. You know, honestly, the fact that Tavis Smiley and CNN doesn't get it, the fact that they believe that this relationship between this man and this woman, his mother, is in some way worthy of ridicule, I feel better knowing it, because we have so little in common with the people who are at CNN, and they don't care to reach out and actually have anything in common with us. Then you know what? Fine, as long as we know where you are and what you stand for. But could I just point out one other thing real fast about JD Vance's mother? I just want to pull this back here because I heard another story about this. If I could, really quickly, and why what Tavis Smiley and CNN did there is even that much more despicable. Because JD Vance's mother is not part of American politics. JD Vance's mother is not a candidate. JD Vance's mother has not been out there making the case for her son. She's not doing interviews. She's not on the campaign trail. She's not running for office. And when I saw this image right here of his mother and Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, I was reminded of a story that JD Vance told in an interview about a month ago. It was the night of this convention. It was the night of his speech, and his mother was ushered into the VIP box here, where you see her sitting as she's breaking down in tears, looking at her son, which sort of makes me emotional as well. And when she walked into the box, somebody introduced her to Mike Johnson. And JD Vance's mother said, "Oh, pleased to meet you. Now, do you work in politics too?" Because Vance's mom didn't recognize Mike Johnson as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. She doesn't know. She doesn't follow news and politics. This is not something that she's obsessed with, like Tavis Smiley and CNN and all these other people who have no other lives outside of showing up on a cable news set after eating all the free food in the green room and trying to get a cheap laugh by saying JD Vance has mommy issues. No, Tavis Smiley has the issues. JD Vance's mother is normal. She's a normal American who walks into this life now, this setting, after everything she's been through, meets the Speaker of the House and has to ask him what kind of job he's got and whether he's also involved in politics. That's normal. Tavis Smiley isn't. Tavis Smiley isn't 1/10 the person that JD Vance and his mother is. He's despicable. He's not even worth any more of our time, other than to say the best revenge, the best last laugh will be Tuesday night. And we'll see what kind of issues Tavis Smiley has.